Hello, Jim. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Perhaps, obviously, Mylan, a reasonably well-known name, but perhaps people will be less aware of the Global Business Programme. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So for many years I was employed in Sandoz and then latterly in Mylan, running the global supply chain management function, which of course has an end-to-end component, which is very important. And since April of last year, so just coming up in about 9-10 months, then I've been involved as the business owner for the rollout of SAP and indeed enterprise applications within the company. And the idea, of course, is to ensure that when we deliver the systems that we actually are involved in transforming business processes and indeed business organization to bring added value and not only to implement some kind of IT solution. So this is the name for the title, Business Program Owner of the SAP rollout. Yeah.
So with that in mind, you were talking about end-to-end supply chain. One of the key components of this is going to be visibility.
Yeah.
How are you achieving that level of visibility?
Yeah, so in fact that's in this program that's also clearly one of our aims, transparency, visibility of information, easy access, speedy access to information. And we recognized a few years ago also when I was running the supply chain that we had so many different companies on, in many cases, an SAP platform, but different versions, and indeed without any common data language or any common business processes. So one of our challenges within the supply chain management function was to start standardization, harmonization of data and processes, and hence it was a pretty logical move that I would take over this role to bring in harmonized platform. So we would then be running on the same version of SAP, bringing in a global master data language, which is critical to the end-to-end communication of information, bringing in standard processes to allow the companies to communicate their demand back through the supply chain, whether it be to our own manufacturing sites within the network or indeed through the hub to third-party sources, third-party suppliers. So the platform itself is critical, but what's more critical is the harmonization of the business processes and the data structures to ensure that when we talk about an apple, we're all talking about exactly the same kind of apple, and that we don't have the kind of confusion of data that we have had up until now. So very critical. Yeah.
How are you managing that level of standardization and harmonization then with your external suppliers to streamline that process?
Well, with the external suppliers, then of course we oblige them then to use our material numbers. So when we place purchase orders, then of course we're communicating the purchase order with the material number, and the same of course at an earlier stage in the process when we communicate our demands through our net requirements process. So then with third-party suppliers, they are obliged to use our number. And as we go into like serialization and things like this, then also that serialization of our number will have to be incorporated in the goods which they supply to us, in their documentation and also on the labels, what they will supply the product with.
It's a great idea, but it sounds like it must come with a fair chunk of challenges to actually achieving that and getting everyone on board using the same numbers, making sure, for example, they might have duplication with their own numbers.
Yeah, sure. So there are many challenges, to be perfectly honest, difficult to summarize them within a few minutes during this interview. But even within our own organization, if I give you one example, we manufacture our own starting materials, what we refer to as API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. And one of the big companies that we own, which is part of our organization in India, for them the API was a finished good because they were selling this, and some 70% of their output they still today sell to non-Mylan companies. So for them this was a finished good. But of course now they become part of the Mylan network. It's no longer a finished good, it's an API, which is one of our starting materials. And for us, the finished good is the pack of drug product. So there again, in that whole data structure, then in discussion with them, we had to oblige them to change their whole data structure, not only the numbers, but indeed the structure. And that type of challenge we've encountered on many occasions, different types of around the same type of theme, and you've really just got to work it through. How often do you create new numbers? Do you create new numbers just because you have a new cost? Just because you have a new supplier, which might be very convenient for someone in one part of the chain in finance, but not very convenient to others who are planning demand. So there's a lot of trade-off as well, but the governance and a very strict and controlled process is critical to that. Otherwise, you start to lose the transparency as well and the harmonisation of the data. Yeah.
I know in one of your panels you're due to be talking about agility and the balance between that and profitability. Mm-hmm. How exactly are you approaching this? Because it's one of those, it's one of those battles that will continue forevermore, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off, and depending on where you're coming from, people see it quite differently. What's agility and what the cost is. I was just explaining to one of my colleagues earlier today, in fact, we're establishing an European packaging centre. So we bring in the bulk product, we decouple the process, so we do the customization to the country pack as we need it, which is, from a supply chain management point of view, managing the whole demand and supply is the right way to do things, because you then don't pack something you don't need. And therefore you can be much closer to the demand signals and you pack in a short period of time. But in saying that, it means when you pack smaller quantities, because if you pack too much, they may have underestimated or indeed overestimated their demand, and therefore you're packing the wrong quantity. So you have to pack frequently and keep supplying the goods. So from a total end-to-end supply chain, this is the way to do it, because you then eliminate a lot of obsolescence. If you've oversupplied, you can better use the product and share it between countries, between different markets. But from a pure manufacturing point of view, the last thing someone in manufacturing wants to do is to be making changes, and frequently making changes, stopping the packaging line, cleaning it out, bringing in new product, bringing in new packaging materials, running for for half an hour and then stopping and starting again. So from the manufacturing point of view, the cost increases significantly. And therefore, if you take a pure manufacturing point of view, you would never do that. From an agility point of view, it's exactly the way to do it. So then it's a question of getting the balance between the total cost and indeed the agility that you gain by using such a model.
So one of the ways that I know a lot of people talked about to achieve this balance appropriately is through supply chain segmentation. So what's your approach?
Yeah. Well, of course, many people approach segmentation in different ways. That's clear. We have also approached it in different ways, whether you segment by supply volume or indeed sales revenue or profit margin. But using the same kind of structure, we use an ABC, XYZ segmentation. And this will determine the kind of supply chain parameters that we want to define. So by that I mean, A, clearly are your most important products, which normally would be like the 80% using normal Pareto. B is something like the next 15%, and then the C category is that last 5%. Whereas XYZ refers, generally speaking, to the way in which the products are supplied or indeed manufactured. Are they supplied on a daily basis, a very continuous flow, or is it something much more seasonal, or is it really the extreme where it's like a tender business? You don't know you're going to get it, and then you may be asked, and then if you're lucky you win the tender. So each of these product categories or segments in that A, B, C, X, Y, Z should be treated differently, should be given a different kind of focus to ensure that you are remaining agile to supply the right product at the right time to the right customer segment. So this is the kind of model that we've used very successfully, and when we go into any of our companies, then we apply that template and then redefine or modify the supply chain parameters accordingly.
Now, just finally, because we are almost out of time, one of the other things you're going to be discussing at Logipharma is establishing a global network of demand and supply. So what are the biggest challenges in doing that?
Yeah, I think one, going back to the earlier comments, is the whole question of having the information flow seamlessly, really synchronizing the MRP functionality, whether it be in the affiliate, ComOps type organization who are distributing the product, or whether it be in the packaging or in the bulk manufacturing. In many cases, like we do, companies have like a central planning hub or a regional planning hub, and again, that MRP has to be coordinated, really linking supply and demand. And of course, to complete the trilogy, then you have supply, demand, and inventory, and making sure then that you're setting your inventory parameters correctly. And if you have them well set and you do have good demand signals and supply is coming in on time, then you will always stay within the band. And then it's a question, of course, of managing the exceptions. When either the demand signal or indeed the supply signal wasn't just quite what you would have expected, you end up with an overstocking, or indeed you end up with an understocking, resulting in supply issues, supply constraints, service level issues, or indeed obsolescence, depending on which part of the band is. So this is really the challenge for us, to get the signals right and to manage inventory. At the end of the day, supply chain is all about managing the inventory and delivering that product to the customer in the right time at the right cost. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are going to have to call it today, but I'm looking very much forward to seeing more from you at Logipharma itself. But if people want to know more in the meantime, where can they go?
Well, they can certainly contact me if they want to do so. I think my details are also included in the Logipharma brochure, and I'm happy to give any advice that someone might be looking for, or to speak to someone depending on the topic that they want to discuss with me. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.